Daniel stood outside the small red brick house with a warm smile on his face. It was a quiet neighborhood, trees on both sides, a small park nearby, and the sound of kids laughing somewhere down the street. His wife, Maya, held their daughter, Hope's hand tightly. Hope looked up at the house and whispered, "Is this going to be our home, Daddy?" Daniel bent down, kissed her forehead and said, "Maybe, sweetheart. Let's meet the landlord first." The family had been looking for a new place to live for weeks. Everywhere they went, there was either a problem, or someone else just took it. But this house, it felt right. It was close to Maya's new job, near Hope's school, and finally, in a safer area. Daniel walked up and rang the bell. Mr. Whitmore opened the door slowly. He was an older white man, with silver hair and sharp eyes that scanned the family from head to toe. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile. "Can I help you?" he asked, sounding more like a guard than a landlord. Daniel smiled politely. "Hi, we're here about the rental listing. You spoke to my wife Maya over the phone yesterday. 3-bedroom unit, backyard, near the park?" Whitmore stared at them for a long second. Then he sighed. "Ah, right, that one. It's gone." Daniel blinked. "Gone." "Yes," Whitmore said firmly. "I just gave it to someone else. A couple came by this morning and took it. Sorry." He began to close the door. Maya stepped forward. "Sir, we confirmed with you just last night. You said we were the first to see it today." Whitmore shrugged. "Things change." Hope looked up at her mom, confused. "But I drew this house," she whispered, holding a folded piece of paper. Daniel looked into the man's eyes. He had seen that look before. Cold, judging, empty of kindness. He didn't yell, he didn't beg. He just nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said quietly, and turned to leave. Maya's eyes were wet, but she followed her husband. Hope clutched her drawing, confused and sad. As they walked down the small path back to their car, a black BMW pulled into the driveway. A young white couple stepped out laughing, holding iced coffees, and chatting with Mr. Whitmore like they were old friends. He welcomed them in, smiling, holding the door wide open. From the car, Hope asked in a soft voice, "Why did he say the house is gone?" Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Because," he said slowly, "sometimes people don't want to see us in certain places, not because we did anything wrong, but because of how we look." Hope looked down. Maya wiped her tears silently. That night, back in their tiny apartment across town, Maya couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling. Daniel sat at the table, looking at Hope's drawing. She had colored the house in yellow and green. On the door, she had written in big letters, "Our future home." He took a deep breath, picked up his phone, and recorded a video. Just a simple message. "Today, my family was turned away from a home, not because we couldn't pay, not because we were late, but because we were black. I didn't shout, I didn't fight, I just walked away. But I want people to know, this still happens. Even when you do everything right." He showed the house. Then Hope's drawing. And finally, his quiet face. He posted it online with a caption, "The door that didn't open." He didn't expect much. Maybe a few shares, maybe a few kind words. But by morning, the video had over 200,000 views, and it was climbing. In another city, a lawyer named Alicia Jones watched the clip on her lunch break. She stopped eating. Rewound. Watched again. She recognized the house and the man who owned it. "It's him," she whispered. "That's the same landlord who turned my parents away 15 years ago." She opened a folder from her cabinet full of complaints that went nowhere. Old letters, ignored requests, closed cases. "Maybe this time," she said, "we finished the story right." Meanwhile, back in Daniel's apartment, the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News reporters wanted interviews. Civil rights groups wanted his permission to use the video. Strangers were offering kind words. Others shared their own experiences. But Daniel didn't feel powerful. He just felt tired. "Why do we still have to prove we're good enough?" Maya asked quietly. Daniel didn't answer, because deep down, he didn't know. That afternoon, as he took Hope to school, a woman on the street stopped him. "I saw your video," she said. "I cried. You made me feel seen." Daniel thanked her, and walked away. But her words stayed with him. Maybe he didn't just share pain. Maybe he started something far away. In an office with tall glass windows, a real estate developer watched the video too. He leaned back thinking, deeply. Then he turned to his assistant. Mr. Whitmore sat in his soft leather chair, sipping black coffee and staring out of his window. His neighborhood was quiet, clean, and in his words, just the way it should be. He believed he was doing the right thing by protecting his property. He told himself it wasn't about race. It was about standards. But deep down, he knew. He just didn't care. Until now. There was a knock at his door. His tenant, Mrs. Linda from apartment 3, stood there holding a phone and looking nervous. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. I just wanted to let you know that something strange is happening." He frowned. "What is it?" "Well," she hesitated. "There's a video online. It's everywhere. It's about you." Whitmore's face tightened. "About me?" "Yes." She nodded. "About the family you turned away. People are angry. You might want to see this." She handed him her phone. Whitmore tapped play. There, on the screen was Daniel. standing in front of the same house, calmly telling the story. His voice was quiet but full of meaning. His daughter's drawing came next. Then the final line, I didn't fight him, but maybe now, you'll see. The truth? The video ended. Below it, 2.1 million views, comments flooding in, heartbreaking. This still happens in 2025. He handled it with more grace than I ever could. Let's find that landlord. Whitmore's hands started to shake slightly. He shut the door quickly, went into his room, and pulled down the curtains. Outside, a car slowed down in front of the house. Someone pointed at it. Whitmore stepped back from the window. His quiet life wasn't quiet anymore. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel was sitting in a coffee shop with Maya. He kept checking his phone, overwhelmed by the attention. He had messages from newspapers, messages from lawyers, messages from people he didn't even know, sharing their own painful stories. Hope sat beside them, drawing again. This time she was sketching the same house, but now she added birds, sun, and smiling faces. Alicia Jones, the lawyer who had watched the video the night before, sat in her office reading old notes. She pulled out one folder after another, labeled with names and addresses. Each one had the same pattern: rejected application, no reason given, black family, landlord, Mr. Raymond Whitmore, 15 years, she whispered, and nothing ever changed. She opened her laptop and began writing a detailed message, not to the police, not to the news, but to someone in real estate law enforcement. We need to open an investigation. I have the files. And now, I have the video. Back at Whit house. The knocks didn't stop. Now. It was a reporter. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to comment on the viral video? He shut the door. Then another. Mr. Whitmore, the community is demanding answers. Another shut. Each knock sounded louder than the last, but behind his curtains, Whitmore began to panic. He opened his laptop and checked the property forums. His name was there, trending. Someone had posted screenshots of his past listings. Someone else had pulled up public complaints from former tenants. There were whispers of lawsuits, threats of protest. He picked up the phone and called a friend in the city council. Tell them it's just a misunderstanding, he said quickly. Tell them I rented to a black couple last year. But no one wanted to listen now, because the video had done something powerful. It had exposed the pattern, and patterns tell a story louder than any voice can. At the same time, a man named Mr. Clark watched the video from his office on the 25th floor of a tall building. He was the head of a major real estate investment firm. Leaned forward, watching Daniel's calm face. Then he said to his assistant, "This man deserves more than sympathy. He deserves a chance to change things. Set up a meeting." Later that night, Maya scrolled through her phone and found something unexpected. Someone had taken Hope's drawing from the video and turned it into digital art. It had been shared over 100,000 times. People added words to it. The door that didn't open will someday be ours. Maya showed it to Daniel. He stared at it in silence. Hope leaned over and said, "Do you think the man with the white hair saw it?" Daniel nodded. "I think he saw it, and I think he's scared." At the same moment, Whitmore was on the phone with his lawyer. "I need protection," he snapped. "These people are attacking me." But the lawyer didn't agree. "You did this to yourself, Ray," he said. "And if the investigation opens up, you're going to lose everything." Whitmore sat in the dark, curtains still closed. He never imagined one quiet man could cause such a storm. But he forgot one thing. Karma doesn't knock. It walks in when it's ready. The morning light came through the window of Daniel's small apartment. Hope sat by the table, crayons scattered in front of her, drawing quietly like she always did when something was on her mind. This time, she wasn't just coloring the house. She was drawing herself standing in front of it, smiling, holding a sign that said, "Welcome home." Maya poured her a glass of milk. "You're drawing that house again, sweetie?" Hope nodded. "One day it's going to be ours. Right, Mama?" Maya paused. She didn't want to crush her daughter's hope, but she also didn't want to lie. She knelt beside her and said, "Sometimes, good people don't get what they deserve, but sometimes, they do." Hope looked up and smiled, then carefully folded her drawing and slipped it into her backpack. At the same time, Alicia Jones, the lawyer who had seen the viral video, printed all the files she had on Mr. Whitmore. It was a thick stack, too thick for coincidence. She highlighted names of families, the reasons they were rejected, and the patterns that were always there. Same neighborhood, same race, same excuse, just rented out, and now, she had public support. The video had given her what the law never could before, proof backed by people. "This isn't just discrimination," she said to herself. "This is a case, a real one." Back at Hope School, the teacher gave the students a simple task. Draw your home, or the home you dream of. Hope's hand shot up. "Can I draw the home we almost had?" The teacher hesitated, but nodded, so Hope pulled out her folded sketch. She opened it slowly and started adding more to it. She drew her mom watering flowers, her dad fixing the mailbox, and herself standing at the front door, holding a heart. By the time class ended, her teacher walked over to see. She stared at the drawing for a long time. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "Can I share this with someone?" Hope shrugged. I guess so. That night, the teacher posted the drawing online with the caption, "My student was turned away from a home because of her family's skin color." She didn't get angry. She drew her dream instead. She added hashtags, hashtag let them in, hashtag hope speaks, hashtag the house that didn't open within an hour. The post was shared by thousands. People from different states began to draw their own dream homes in support. Some colored flowers, some added words, some posted stories of their own. One post said, "I was hope once. I still remember the house I wasn't allowed to live in." Daniel sat on the couch, watching the posts roll in. He hadn't expected this, not from a child's drawing, but maybe that's what made it special. Hope wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just telling the truth, in the way only a child could. Maya opened an email on her phone and gasped. "It's from a law firm," she said. "They saw Hope's drawing online. They want to help. For free." Daniel leaned over. Another message came in from a local news channel, then another from an artist who wanted to turn the sketch into a mural. Hope looked up, confused. "Why do they like my picture?" Daniel hugged her tightly. "Because it says what most people are too scared to say." Meanwhile, Mr. Whitmore sat in front of his laptop, reading the new article that had just gone viral. "The Girl with the Sketchbook? How a Child's Drawing is Exposing Housing Racism." His name was in the article, not as a businessman, not as a landlord, but as the villain. His phone rang. Another call from someone angry, asking questions he didn't answer. He just stared at the drawing on the screen. Hope's dream, and for the first time, he felt something strange in his chest. Was it shame? No, it was fear. Because this time, it wasn't just lawyers coming after him, it was the public. In a quiet corner of the city, Mr. Clark, the real estate investor who had watched the viral video earlier, now looked at the drawing. He picked up the phone and called his assistant. "That girl, she doesn't just want a house. She wants to feel safe. Let's help her family own that place, not rent it." His assistant paused. "Buy the property from Whitmore." Mr. Clark smiled. "Exactly. Karma doesn't wait forever, and neither do I." Back in the small apartment, Hope was asleep on the couch, her drawing next to her head. Daniel stood at the window, looking at the sky. So much had happened. So much was still happening. He thought about that man with the cold eyes, the one who closed the door. Alicia Jones stood at the edge of the city archive room. It was quiet, dusty, and filled with old filing cabinets that hadn't been touched in years. But Alicia wasn't looking for dust. She was looking for proof. She opened one drawer after another, pulling files connected to Mr. Raymond Whitmore. As her fingers flipped through the faded papers, the story slowly revealed itself. Not one family, not two, but dozens of families turned away from the same landlord, and most of them, black or brown. Rejection letters. Unit just rented. Application, missing documents. No response after interview. All neat, all polite, all fake. Alicia ran her fingers across the names. "He's been doing this for years," she whispered, "and he thought no one would ever notice. But now, someone had." Outside, the streets were filled with quiet buzz. Posters of Hope's drawing had begun showing up in shop windows. People walked by, paused, and stared. Some took photos. Some cried. The caption beneath every print was the same. "We were never asking for favors. Just a fair chance." The image was now everywhere, on phones, in schools, even on a billboard downtown. It had become a symbol of quiet resistance. Back at home, Daniel received a call from Mr. Clark, the real estate investor, who'd been quietly watching everything. Mr. Clark's voice was calm but serious. "Mr. Daniel, we want to offer you something, not charity, not pity, but a partnership. We're planning to buy Whitmore's property, and we want you to help us rebuild it." Daniel was speechless. "Why me?" Clark replied. "Because you know what it feels like to be turned away. You know how to make people feel seen." Meanwhile, Whitmore sat in his home, staring at the legal letter he just received. He crumpled it up and threw it on the floor. Was from Alicia Jones. "Your rental practices are under formal review. We have documentation of over 17 discriminatory rejections. You are required to respond within 14 days. Whitmore panicked. He opened his laptop and tried to delete old emails. He pulled out files and tore them in half. He even called a friend, who once worked in records. "Can't you help me?" he begged. The friend replied, "You're already in the headlines, Ray. No one wants to touch this." Alicia wasn't done yet. She brought in a housing rights organization. They created a public online archive called The Hidden List. Every name, every complaint, every ignored voice now made public. Back in Hope's school, her teacher read out a letter from a group of students across the country. "Dear Hope, your drawing gave us courage. We made our own too. We won't let anyone close the door on us again." Hope smiled proudly. Children who had never met her were now following her lead. Maya looked out the window that evening, deep in thought. "I still don't understand," she said softly. "Why would someone work so hard to keep people out?" Daniel replied, "Because if they let us in, they have to see us, and seeing us means admitting we belong." At that moment, Mr. Clark's team met in a conference room. Blueprints were on the table. A new community center, rent-controlled housing, a mural wall featuring Hope's drawing. Daniel's name was listed under head of development. And Whitmore, he wasn't even listed as owner anymore. But before any of it could happen, Alicia needed one final document, the property sale history. It could show whether Whitmore had illegally blocked other buyers or renters. She called the county clerk's office and asked for the records. The man on the phone said, "Funny you called. Someone just tried to delete them." Alicia's voice sharpened. "Who?" The man paused, didn't leave a name, "but we recovered everything." He emailed her the files. There it was, clear as day. Multiple buyers rejected without reason, all with one thing in common, their race. Alicia sat back in her chair. "This isn't just a story now," she whispered. "This is a case for justice." She picked up the phone. "Daniel, I have what we need." Whitmore's curtain just fell down in that very moment. Whitmore sat alone in his living room, staring at the closed blinds. His phone buzzed nonstop. The outside world was closing in. "They won't stop," he muttered. "Why won't they stop?" But deep down, he knew why. Because the people he once pushed out were now standing taller than ever. Daniel stood in a tall office building far away from the old neighborhood where the door had never opened for him. This time, he wasn't here as a tenant, he was here as a guest, and someone very important wanted to meet him. The elevator doors opened to the top floor. A young assistant smiled and guided him inside a large glass office with a view of the city. Behind the desk stood Mr. Clark, confident, kind-eyed, and dressed in a sharp gray suit. He stepped forward and shook Daniel's hand. "Mr. Daniel," he said, "thank you for coming. I've seen your video, I've seen your daughter's drawing, and I've seen enough of Mr. Whitmore's history to know it's time for change." Daniel didn't say much. He was still getting used to being in places like this, spaces where people actually listened to him. Mr. Clark gestured for him to sit. "I won't waste your time," Clark continued. "We're buying Whitmore's property, but not just to own it, to transform it." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Transform it how?" Clark smiled and slid a folder across the desk. Inside were blueprints, plans for a rebuilt housing project, lower rent, better maintenance, a play area for kids, and a community space named after hope. "Your daughter's story has moved thousands," Clark said. "We want her to be part of the future." Daniel's hands shook slightly as he flipped through the pages. He looked up. "Why me?" Clark leaned back. "Because you were denied something you earned, and instead of breaking, you built something stronger. I want you to manage this project, to lead it, to shape it." Daniel was silent. He never imagined being offered this kind of responsibility. He came from struggle, but now struggle was turning into something powerful. Opportunity. "Do I need to go on TV?" he asked nervously. "Do speeches?" Clark smiled. "Only if you want to. Just be yourself. That's what matters." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then yes, I'll do it." At home that night, Maya listened carefully as Daniel told her everything. Hope sat nearby, drawing again. This time, a playground full of children of all colors, all smiling under a rainbow sky. "I'm proud of you," Maya said, eyes full of love. "You didn't fight with anger. You fought with grace." Daniel whispered, "I just wanted a home. I didn't expect to become the one giving homes to others." The next day, Mr. Clark's office made the formal offer to Whitmore. It was generous, enough for him to walk away quietly. But it came with one rule. He doesn't get to stay. He doesn't get to control. He walks away for good. Whitmore was furious. He slammed the phone down. "I'm not selling to them," he growled. But his lawyer called back within the hour. "You don't have a choice," the lawyer said coldly. "They have the money. They have the public. They have the records. If you don't take this deal now, you might lose everything." Whitmore sat in silence. For the first time, he realized the thing he had feared most was happening. The power was no longer his. The next week, the contract was signed. The property changed hands. Whitmore's name was removed from the ownership documents. And Daniel's name was added to a new one. Community manager, Daniel Thompson. News traveled fast. The story was everywhere again. Man denied housing becomes leader of new development project. From rejection to respect, Daniel Thompson's journey. The family that changed a city block. A ceremony was planned to mark the start of construction. Hope stood on stage beside her father, holding her framed drawing. People cheered as Daniel spoke into the mic, his voice clear but humble. "We came here once, hoping for a home. We were turned away. But today, I open this space for all those who've been turned away before. This is not revenge. This is healing." The crowd stood up. Some cried. Some held hands. Everyone felt something powerful in the air. From his small, dark apartment across town, Whitmore watched the news on his old television. He saw Hope smiling. He saw Daniel shaking hands with community leaders. He turned off the screen and sat in silence. He used to believe power came from control. Now, he saw real power came from kindness. And it was a power he never understood. Back on stage, a reporter asked Daniel, "What are you going to name the first building?" He looked at Hope. Then smiled. "We're calling it the Open Door House." For everyone who was once told they didn't belong, Mr. Raymond Whitmore stood in the middle of his now empty living room. The curtains were gone, the paintings were taken down, and the silence felt louder than ever before. A single white envelope lay on the floor near the front door. He had read it 3 times already. The words were simple, but they cut deep. Final notice. You are no longer the legal owner of this property. Vacate within 14 days. He crumpled it up and threw it across the room. But no matter how many times he tore the paper, he couldn't tear the truth. His time was up. Outside, neighbors whispered. Some were glad, some were shocked, and some just shook their heads. They remembered the families who had come and gone, never knowing why they weren't accepted. Now they knew, and now the landlord who kept people out was being asked to leave. Himself at the new community office downtown. Daniel sat across from the real estate team. Plans were moving fast. The property was under full renovation. The new design would include affordable housing for families, a library corner, a playground, and a mural wall painted by local kids at the center of it all. Hope's famous drawing recreated in tiles. Daniel was managing everything. People respected him, listened to him, but inside, a part of him still carried the memory of that closed door. One morning, Daniel received a letter with no return address. He opened it slowly. It was from Whitmore. Mr. Thompson, you win. I'm leaving. But I want you to know, this was my home. I built my life here, and now it's being taken from me. Was I unfair? Maybe. But I was protecting what I had. Maybe you understand that now. Daniel stared at the letter for a long time. Maya read it over his shoulder. He still doesn't get it. Daniel sighed. He might never. The next day, Daniel drove to the old house, now his project site. Construction workers were already removing the old fencing and repainting the walls. What was once cold and unwelcoming was slowly becoming warm, bright, and alive. He stepped inside. The floors still creaked. The same floorboards that once heard rejection now echoed with new purpose. Then he saw Whitmore packing his things. In silence, a small suitcase, a few old books, nothing else. Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Whitmore finally looked up. I suppose you're happy now, he muttered. Daniel shook his head. I'm not here to celebrate. I'm here to make sure the next people who walk through that door never feel what we felt. Whitmore scoffed. You think you're the hero now? Daniel replied quietly. I don't need to be the hero. I just want to be the reason someone feels welcome. Whitmore's mouth opened, but no words came out. For once, he had nothing to say. Hope walked in holding a fresh copy of her drawing. She stopped when she saw the old man. Is he leaving? She asked. Daniel nodded. Yes, he is. Hope walked up and gently handed her drawing to Whitmore. You can keep this, she said kindly. Maybe it'll remind you that people like us just want to feel at home too. Whitmore looked at the paper, the house, the smiles, the colors. Something in him cracked. Thank you, he said softly. I don't deserve it. Hope smiled. That's okay. By the end of the week, Whitmore was gone. No goodbye, no press, just silence. And then the real work began. Dozens of families applied to live in the new building. Single mothers, young students, retired couples, people from all races, cultures, and stories. Daniel reviewed every application carefully, not looking for perfection, just heart. One letter caught his eye. A young black teacher wrote, I want to raise my son in a place where he won't be judged the moment he walks through the door. Daniel approved her instantly. Welcome home, he whispered. As the first new family moved in, Maya stood on the porch with Hope. Mom, Hope said, do you think he's watching us now? Maya smiled gently. Maybe, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, we're writing a better story now. Daniel joined them, keys in hand. This is only the beginning, he said. A new chapter, a new chance, for everyone. And just behind them, workers hung a brand new sign above the building's entrance, the open door house, a place for all. A full month had passed since the final box left Mr. Whitmore's old house. Now, the building looked nothing like before. The windows were clean, the walls were bright with fresh paint, and laughter, real, warm laughter, filled the air. Children played in the courtyard, neighbors sat on porches, talking like old friends. And on the side wall, a huge mural of Hope's drawing reminded everyone of how it all began. Daniel stood beneath it one afternoon, watching the sunlight hit every color just right. He had worked hard, day and night. But it wasn't just about work anymore. It was about healing. Then one day, as Daniel was locking up the community office, a shadow appeared behind him. Daniel. The voice was quiet. Daniel turned slowly. It was him, Mr. Whitmore. His hair looked more gray, his posture less proud. He wore a plain jacket and held no papers, no folders, just his hands in his pockets. What are you doing here? Daniel asked calmly. Whitmore didn't speak for a moment. Then he looked up at the mural, at Hope's smiling face on the wall. I had to see it for myself, he finally said. I didn't believe it would work, but it has. Daniel nodded once. There was silence between them, the kind of silence that carries old wounds, old memories. Then Whitmore spoke again. You know, I wasn't always like that. There was a time when I tried to help people. I gave out free rent once. I helped an old tenant paint her walls. Daniel looked at him, unmoved. What happened? Whitmore shrugged. Fear, anger, maybe bitterness. I started seeing differences instead of people, and it got easier. To shut the door, he looked down at the ground. But when your daughter handed me that drawing, it broke something. Daniel stepped closer, but not out of kindness. Out of truth. You didn't just shut a door, he said. You shut people out of their dreams. People who just wanted a fair shot. Like we did. Whitmore nodded. I know. That's why I came. Not to defend myself, but to ask something. Daniel raised an eyebrow. I want to give back, Whitmore said quietly. I want to volunteer. Daniel blinked. The man who once judged him for his skin, the man who slammed the door on his daughter's dream, now wanted to help. I don't need your help, Daniel said carefully, but maybe this place does. He looked toward the building, where a group of volunteers were painting garden benches. But I'm not the one you need to ask. Whitmore followed Daniel's gaze. Hope was standing nearby, holding a watering can, helping Maya plant flowers. He slowly walked up to her. Hi, he said softly. Hope looked up. You're the man who said the house was gone, she said. He nodded yes, and I was wrong. He knelt down a bit, his voice trembling. I'm sorry, Hope. I thought I was protecting something, but I was just scared, and small, and very wrong. Hope looked at him for a long second. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a fresh drawing, and handed it to him. It was a picture of the building filled with people of every kind, with a sign above it that said, Everyone is welcome. You can hang this where you live now, she said softly. Whitmore stared at the picture, his eyes wet. I'd like that, he whispered. Thank you. From a distance, Maya and Daniel watched quietly. He's changing, Maya said. Maybe, Daniel replied, but even if he doesn't fully, we changed the story. The next week, Whitmore returned with gloves and old sneakers. He didn't ask for attention, he just picked up a brush and painted a bench beside the playground. One of the new tenants, a kind older lady, offered him water. He smiled and took it. No one yelled at him, no one clapped for him either, but maybe that's what growth looked like. Quiet, real, earned. That evening, Daniel stood once again beneath the mural. He looked at the words now painted across the bottom. The door that didn't open gave birth to 100 that did. He smiled. Hope ran up to him, hugging his leg. Daddy, is this the end? He lifted her into his arms. No, sweetheart. This is just the beginning. It was a warm Sunday morning. The sky was clear, and the streets near the new building were full of happy noise. Children laughing, neighbors talking, music playing softly from a speaker on the corner. Today was special. Today, the open-door housing project was being officially opened. The place that once turned people away was now a symbol of welcome. Daniel stood in front of a small stage, dressed in a simple shirt and slacks. He had no script, no fancy words, just the truth in his heart. Maya stood beside him, holding Hope's hand. Behind them, the mural of Hope's drawing shined in the sunlight, a house filled with smiling faces and a bright blue sky. Dozens of families had gathered, reporters too, even city leaders who had once ignored stories like Daniel's. They came today to listen. As the crowd grew silent, Daniel stepped forward and spoke. His voice was steady, humble, strong. 2 years ago, my family came here looking for a place to live. We were told no, not because of money, not because of behavior, but because of something we cannot change: the color of our skin. We walked away that day with pain in our hearts, but hope in our daughter's hands. He looked at Hope. She smiled and gave a small wave to the crowd. Daniel continued. We didn't fight with fists, we fought with faith. And now, look where we are. We turned rejection into renewal. We turned silence into a voice. We turned one closed door into many open ones. The audience clapped. Then stood. Then the clapping grew louder. At that moment, Alicia Jones, the lawyer who had fought alongside Daniel, came on stage with a framed certificate. Today, she said, we officially name this site the Thompson Community Courtyard, in honor of a man who showed us all what courage looks like. The crowd cheered. Hope clapped the loudest. Daniel held the certificate for a long second, then looked down. This isn't just mine, he said. This belongs to everyone who has ever told you don't belong here. Across the crowd, a familiar face stood in the back, quiet, eyes lowered. Mr. Whitmore. He didn't come to be seen. He came to witness. He stayed in the shadows, not looking for attention. When the ceremony ended, he quietly placed a flower near the base of the mural, a white lily, and walked away. No cameras caught him, but Hope saw him, and she smiled. Later, food was served. Kids ran through the garden. A live band played cheerful music as families explored their new homes. Each apartment had small welcome notes on the doors, hand-signed by Daniel, Maya, and even little Hope. Inside every note were the words, "You belong here." That evening, as the sun began to set, Daniel stood on the rooftop alone, looking out over the lights of the neighborhood. Maya joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. Gently, "We did it." Hope ran up the stairs, holding a new drawing. "Look, Daddy." It showed the same building, but this time it was nighttime. The windows were lit up. Inside each one, she had drawn families, laughter, joy, love. At the top, in big letters, it said, "Home means no one is left out." Daniel took the picture and held it to his chest. Then he looked at his family, his wife, his daughter, the people below who now had a safe place to live, and whispered to the sky, "This was worth every closed door." 3 weeks after the grand opening of the Open Door housing project, Daniel sat in the new office built just beside the courtyard. The walls were painted light blue. Sunlight came through the wide windows. A shelf in the corner held all of Hope's drawings, now protected in glass. It had been peaceful, but that morning, something new happened. The mail came, and not just 1 or 2 letters, hundreds. Daniel opened the first envelope. Inside was a short note written in neat handwriting. I watched your story from another country. I cried with you. I smiled with your daughter. Thank you for reminding me that the world still has good people. Maria, from Brazil. Daniel stared at it. He opened another. My mother was denied a home in 1972 for being black. She passed last year, but I know she would have been proud of what you did. Thomas, from Chicago. Another. I teach 4th grade. My students watched your daughter's mural video. They made drawings just like hers. We've put them on the classroom wall. Ms. Rivera, from Texas. Stares welled in Daniel's eyes. He had no idea his story had traveled so far. He didn't expect it to matter this much to so many, but it did, and it was still growing. Later that evening, Maya walked in carrying a box. There's more, she said. It's not stopping. Hope followed behind, holding a colorful envelope. This one's for me, she said excitedly. Daniel watched as Hope opened it carefully. Inside was a drawing. It showed her standing in front of the mural, holding a crown above her head. At the bottom, a child had written, "You are our queen of kindness." Emmy, age 6. Hope giggled. I don't want to be a queen, she said. I just want everyone to have houses and swings. Daniel smiled. And that's exactly why they love you, he said. That weekend, Alicia Jones arrived at the building. With a surprise. She had put together a book titled Letters to Hope. How one family inspired the world. Inside were printed copies of the most powerful messages from people around the globe. It wasn't just a book, it was a record of change. Hope hugged the book tight. Can we put it in the library? She asked. Yes, Daniel said. But first, let's read every single page. Together. Far away in another city, a young couple was packing to move. They had been rejected before, twice, but this time, they had been accepted into one of the new units Daniel helped create. As they packed, the wife held up her phone, showing Daniel's story. This man changed everything, she said softly. No, her husband replied. He just reminded the world that everyone deserves something better. That same night, Whitmore sat in a small apartment he had quietly rented outside the city. He turned on the TV. Another report about the Open Door project came on. He didn't change the channel. He didn't look away. Instead, for the first time, in a long time, he whispered to himself, I was wrong. And maybe, it's not too late for me either. He walked to his table, picked up Hope's old drawing, the one she gave him weeks ago, and taped it on the wall. No frames. No spotlight. Just truth. Hanging silently in a quiet room. And so the story continued, not through protests or lawsuits, but through letters, drawings, smiles, and truths. Because sometimes real change doesn't come loud. It comes in small hands. In crayons, in simple words like, you belong here. The new school year had begun. Hope stood outside her new classroom, holding her backpack and a small lunchbox. She looked up at the door nervously. Mama, she whispered, what if no one remembers my drawing? Maya knelt beside her. Sweetheart, they don't need to remember the drawing. They'll remember your heart. Hope smiled, then nodded. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. Inside the classroom, the walls were already filled with art, but one corner caught her eye. A special board with a banner above it that said, Voices that Changed the World, and right in the center was her drawing. Not the original, but a beautiful, printed copy. Her teacher, Miss Hallen, smiled as she saw Hope walk in. You're the girl with the house drawing, she said softly. Hope nodded. That was a long time ago. Ms. Allen replied, maybe, but it's still making changes today. That week, the school held a special assembly. They called it Doors That Should Never Close. Daniel was invited to speak. Maya sat proudly in the front row, and Hope stood beside the stage, holding her father's hand. As Daniel spoke to the students, he kept it simple. My daughter once drew a house we couldn't have, but that drawing opened more doors than I ever imagined. He paused. If you ever feel like someone is shutting you out, don't lose your voice. Speak with kindness, speak with strength, and draw your dream anyway. The students clapped. Many of them had their own stories of being judged, being bullied, or simply being different. After the assembly, they returned to class and were given a simple task. Draw what your door looks like, the one you want to open for others. A boy who had never spoken much drew a door with music notes all around it. A girl with a wheelchair drew a door with a long ramp and balloons. A quiet student in the back drew a giant rainbow door with the words, This one's for everyone. Later that day, Ms. Allen walked over to Hope. You didn't draw today, she said gently. Hope shrugged. I already did my drawing. It opened all the doors. Ms. Allen smiled. Then maybe you should teach others how to draw theirs. From that day on, every week, Hope led a kindness art club at school. They didn't talk about race or law or money. They just shared feelings and turned them into art. Drawings of open arms, open homes, open hearts. One afternoon, Ms. Allen received an email from a principal in another district. We saw the open door project. We want to bring it to our schools. Can you connect us with the family? Hope's story was growing again. Not in courtrooms or city streets now, but in classrooms, in crayons, in young hearts. Meanwhile, back at the open door housing project, a wall was being painted again. This time, not by professional artists, by children. Hope handed brushes to kids from every floor. Together, they created a mural of doors, all shapes, all colors, all wide open. At the center of it, in bold white letters, it read, "No more closed doors." As evening fell, Daniel stood back, watching the kids work. His heart full. Maya stood beside him, her hand wrapped around his. "You think this will last?" she asked. Daniel looked at the wall, at the sky, and at their daughter laughing with her new friends. "It already has," he said, "because now even the smallest hand can hold the key." And far across the city, in a school neither of them had ever visited, a child looked at a copy of Hope's drawing and whispered, "Someday, I'll build my own house like that, one where nobody is left out,